Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Maintaining Migration Best Practices. Today, we will learn about best practices to keep in mind while performing a migration and how they can be easily accomplished in later versions of OnBase. We're also going to provide a little bit of insight about migrating to the cloud. So first, let's take a look at our updated customer success team. So you may recognize some familiar faces and might have already had the pleasure of meeting some of our newer members on the team. And we're super excited to have them aboard to help provide great support, all while making our recent move to Salesforce. So more details about our move to Salesforce will be covered at the end of this presentation. But for those of you who have never attended one of our webinars, I have some housekeeping items for you to review. If you have been here before, this is just your reminder that the audience is muted, although be sure to use the chat box that's available to type comments and questions. Please complete the survey that's at the end of this webinar. We really enjoy hearing your feedback and ideas to consider those for future webinars. And if you're curious about other webinars that we've done in the past, you can check them out at naviant.com/resources/video. So now I will pass it along to Christian to review our agenda for today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for choosing to spend part of your Thursday here with us. Let's go ahead and start things off with a quick look at our agenda. As you can imagine from the title of this webinar, today we'll be covering all things migration. And of course, the best place to start will be with the preparation for the move. After we review the key preparation items, we will review a demo of the most up-to-date migration process we have in OnBase. And finally, the buzzword everyone loves to hate, we'll be covering the basics of the Highland Cloud and the most important concepts we must keep in mind when migrating to it. All right, we're going to start this off with a poll, and I would like everyone to let me know what they think the most important part of the migration process will be. I'll get that spun up for you in a second. All right, that poll should be live. Is it preparation, migration, or testing? Okay, great. I see some answers coming in. Thank you. And I'm sure in the tech world, this one's going to be hotly debated. And so you can imagine different people will have different thoughts. And I can see right now we're slightly split. We have about 64% in preparation and 36% in testing. I'll give it a couple more seconds here. Let's do about 5 more seconds and I'll close this out.
No one wants to go for migration? Nobody?
I know, I'm
Anybody?
surprised. All right, I'm going to go ahead and shut that off. It looks like the final poll was 67% with preparation, which personally I agree with, and 33% with testing. It is very close between those two, but I would say that those would be the two I would vote for as well. All right. Without this solid plan in place, given what we were just talking about with preparation, the chances of migrating are much less, if not impossible, especially with the technology space. All right, we can really break down preparation for migration into two categories, the business-facing view and the technology-facing view. Luckily for us, the most crucial part of either is going to be communication. We can't invoke changes to a system without discussing this change in depth. Think about the catastrophe of making a change that corrupts production data, and yet no backups were taken due to the lack of communication. Honestly, this open communication trumps all of the other following considerations, but that's not to say that the others are not important. With the emphasis on communication, we must now determine the business case for this change and in turn verify that this update is indeed beneficial. Ultimately, will this migration generate value and a return on investment? Obviously, this item is closely related to our next key point of understanding your technology stack. I know lots of business people like to push this over to their tech team, but it really helps if they understand the technology stack. Is there an intended functionality that already exists that performs these features that we want to have migrated? With these two items, we can easily determine whether migration is even an option to begin with. But let us say in our example that a new feature is proven necessary and we have acquired approval from all of our stakeholders. What would be our next step? It would be to schedule a timeline and outline key milestones for this migration process. If I have any managers or C-suite individuals in this webinar, I'm sure that these milestones are appreciated and lessens stress across the board. Again, this goes back to our overarching theme here, communication. Setting up a timeline and associated milestones will ensure we follow through and progress towards our goal. For example, say our system admin will be generating a test system on the 28th, but the database administrator had the creating of the test database scheduled on the 29th. The entire process is going to fail and send us spiraling into any number of unintended consequences. All right, now that our managers are happy, how can we as the tech team stay sane with the massive pressure weighing on all of us, with the demands for communication, the responsibility of meeting these milestones, and all of our usual workload? The best advice I can give is to familiarize yourself with your system. I realize that, I realize this was a consideration for the business user. However, we will ratchet this up a degree. Instead of just being an acquaintance with this software, we as the tech team should really be a family with it. We should know the connection strings to the servers, the database indexing, etc. And if we do not, we should, you guessed it, communicate with a member who does. This will save many headaches in the future. Now let's take the previous point of understanding the existing features and duplicate it to the added features that will be migrated to a new or existing environment. This means ensuring we have the proper system, security, and performance requirements to meet the business expectations for our migration. I'm sure I don't have to tell any of you that the companies definitely make their money's worth with us as the tech team. Just a few more key points. Much like creating a timeline, we should also create a testing plan. Let us say we have the green light, our test and dev servers are all set up and ready to be migrated into production. How will we determine if the migration has been a success? Of course, we need a solid test plan. Now, I will not bore you with specifics because a quick Google search, you'll find any plethora of testing plans for different software stacks. However, keep in mind the most important part is to produce documentation that describes how the tester will verify that the system works as intended. Does the system perform as expected post-migration? Does it still integrate with third-party applications? Does it function better than before? All right, we're almost up to our demo here, so hang in there. This associated slide hits on some criteria we should always watch for prior to a migration or change of any kind. We want to understand the migration process. There's no harm in practicing migration with non-critical changes in lower environments, especially when you make use of our next point, taking frequent backups of your database to preserve your data. This backup will be a savior should we need to back out of our migration. This means, should the worst occur, we will not experience any downtime. Lastly, I cannot stress this enough, please communicate to all associated parties. Okay, the moment we've all been waiting for is almost here, the actual migration process that no one voted for in the importance category. And we're gonna start with another quick poll. I would like to know how many of us are running on OnBase version 18 or later. And so that should be available to you now. Great, I'm seeing some answers come in. Oh wow, this is great. I'm liking all the people on version 18. Looks like a few of us are a little bit earlier. All right, we have 65% of the vote in. I'll give it another 5 to 10 seconds here. Okay, beautiful. We have about 80% of us that are upgraded to 18 or later. A lot of the next things you'll see will pertain demo-wise to 18 or later, given we've upgraded our Highlands change management process. However, there's some good key points here that will also coordinate with those of us who are in version 17. All right. So we'll start off with the past approaches, which I'm sure all of you on 17 or coming from 17 or previous have a bit of a headache with these. It's an amazing yet outdated approach to migration. It's still viable, and some aspects we will still want to perform, such as a database backup. You may even see some of these terms built into our new process that we will demo shortly. Fortunately, this new process is much more time and cost efficient, and so that's what we'll be demoing today. As you look over this list, you'll notice it's quite technical in nature and requires some people with some good understandings of the database and connections. And the good news is, as we approach newer and newer versions, the amount of tech experience you'll need is much less. And we will discuss that in detail as we come up onto our current approach. At the moment we've all been waiting for, the demo of our current approach. In OnBase 18 and later, this is known as the OnBase change management process. We'll be covering the creation of our test system. Many of you will already have this configured, but it's still a great resource to have in your back pocket. We're going to make changes in that environment and then follow up with exporting and importing those changes back into production. All right, let me go ahead and start this. This is a screen recording for the sake of time, and so I'll try my best to explain everything that's going on. First thing is first, for the sake of time, we will be doing a test database and connection to test database that has been enabled off screen. I'm sure if this demo is loved, we can definitely create a new demo of connecting to a test database. More information can be found on the ever-loved MRGs, the application server or system admin MRGs. I'm sure that's what everybody loves to hear, just reference those MRGs. So let's go ahead and log into our OnBase configuration here. We're going to click OK on errors, as we always do with OnBase. We don't like seeing them, so we click OK to get them to go away. And then when it does load, we're going to navigate to the utils option up in the top right corner. There'll be a change control option and then a test system creation button. And we are already halfway to creating our test system. A pop-up should load with a pretty green plus button that we're going to click on. There we go. And you'll notice all of these different information that we originally had to configure separately can all be configured here in our change management process. We'll alter this information to match what we set up beforehand regarding the test database and associated connections. And then here we're going to browse out to those disk group paths. I'm sure this will be the most riveting part of the entire demo as we find the proper path. Almost there. Of course, depending on your system, the path might not be quite as intense, but now that we have that path in, we're also going to enter an install ID. This will be automatically generated, so it's not required, but is recommended. And of course, in our case, we can write something that's a little fun. All right. And then we're going to look down at these bottom three tabs of test document, user accounts, and credentials. We're going to preload some of our documents into the test system, along with resetting some passwords so that our admins can access the environment from any user perspective. Keep in mind that none of this is actually required, and if you already have a test system that is a mirror of production, you won't really need to worry yourself with this at all. But it is a really nice, as I mentioned, a nice tool to have in your tool belt. All right, we're not going to mess with credentials, but this is really, I think it's fascinating that we can reset all of the users on this test system, so the admin no longer has to go back and forth with a large team trying to determine how to get in and test from a different perspective. All right, we're going to go ahead and execute this. Enter that password, and with the magic of post-production video editing, our test system will be created extremely quickly. And just like that, we now have a test system set up. I'm going to close out of all of these open windows and log into Studio. We don't need to reset any application servers. We haven't made any changes that need to be propagated yet. And the most fun part of OnBase is waiting for it to load and log in. And you will notice when I do log in, I will start by logging into the production system. And then afterwards, once we are connected, I will log in to our test environment that we just created. Let's make this screen a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. Perfect. All right. And again, thanks to video editing, you'll notice that there have been some changes made in our test environment. Not just a change, but there'll be a whole new work view that has appeared. Give it 2 seconds here, and if you're looking closely, you'll see a new work view that will be applied in our test environment. There it is. All right, so now we're in our test environment, and we're going to make some changes. We've already made that work view change. You can take my word for it, and we're going to make some changes to our workflow. I'm going to check out the applicant hire or reject. This came over from our production environment, and we're going to make changes in test. Let's go ahead and add some actions. All right, so we want to add this document type to this action. And I know this isn't necessarily a workflow specific demo, but you really can make any changes if you are wanting to try this out. You can make any changes you want, and these will be implemented and imported into your production. Let's make this functional by removing the document type from this lifecycle. All right, and when we are satisfied with our changes that were cleared, of course, by our stakeholders and scheduled out after an extensive review of our existing and target features, we can export these changes. That export button is going to be right up there in the ribbon. A new pop-up should display. It's also worth mentioning that in this scenario, I reviewed our test and backup plans, at least let's say I did. And with the click of the export button, a new screen, as you'll see, is appeared. We're going to export our work view and workflow lifestyle changes. So we found our work view application, and now we're going to find our workflow that we created. The worst part is finding the actual thing that we changed in a big environment. Let's add that over and let's start that export. I'm going to save this to our desktop. And then once again, I'm going to open up Studio, but this time in the production environment. Let's name it something special. Close out of this. Close out of the test. We're in production again, and now we're going to click the import button rather than export, and another window will pop up. We simply have to browse out to what we exported. And much like before, we're going to select what we did change in our test environment. Now keep in mind the work view is net new, and so we're actually going to create this. And our workflow was a addition that came from production, so we're going to replace. And you'll be able to see the different statuses in the middle of the screen there. Let's navigate out to the workflow. And this time around, we're going to replace. And then we're going to apply this decision. And within this screen, we can also check for errors. And so you'll see in a moment, I'm going to run the verification, and it looks like a popped up error came up. Now you're going to want to review these because before you can continue, these errors will have to be resolved. Warnings do not necessarily need to be resolved, but of course we recommend resolving any issues. For us, we're lucky. We're going to auto resolve these. This won't always work, but for us, it will. And then finally, when everything looks good, we're going to proceed to import our changes. We're going to review this extensively, again, for the interest of time, not quite as extensively as I would have liked, but let's go ahead and start that import. All right, the import was successful. We can finish and then reset our server cache to propagate these changes out. And then finally, we're going to test out our freshly migrated changes. And so as you could see, we really only had 2 different pop-ups the entire time, creating our test system and then using Studio to import and export that system. Let's log into the generic manager account that I'm hoping all of you have changed from just the generic password All right, let's go ahead and import a document here. We're going to test out both our work view and our workflow that was not in production previously. Here we go, and you'll notice those tasks coincide with the tasks that we created and modified. I'm going to go ahead and hire myself and give myself the humble salary of 1 with lots of zeros behind it. Let's enter our HR generalist name. Of course, I'm going to accept this offer because it was very generous and finish importing. And then our last step here is just to test to make sure that the work view is working as well. So you'll notice after this import, I'll navigate to the work view application and retrieve that document. Of course, it's worth being said that the amount of testing I've done in this demo is not the testing that I would recommend people to do. I would definitely recommend having a plan, but that's a bit hard to keep condensed in a 30-minute video. And so we're just going to test one import within the work view. And perfect, it showed up and proves that our change management process is up and running successfully. All right, I hope you're able to follow along with that demo there. And with that, we are on the back end of our webinar. The real reason why everyone is here, it is to talk about the cloud. Final poll coming up. Are you interested in migrating to the cloud? Yes or no? I have just launched that. Let's see if we've lost anybody along the way. Oh, interesting, okay. It looks like 75% is at yes now. That's good to see. It does seem like the tech world is going towards the cloud. I know it kind of is hotly debated. Some people like the added control of not being in the cloud, but then again, does allow us to do some pretty unique things. Let's do 5 more seconds here. We're at 71% yes, 29% no. All right, I'm going to close that out. And unfortunately, for the 29% who said no, you'll have to hang in with me here as I talk about the cloud. It might not pertain to you now, but who knows, in the future, you might look back on this and say, oh, I'm glad I saw that. All right, so first up, what is the cloud? The cloud is a software and service that runs on a global network of servers instead of locally on your computer. These servers can then be optimized for their intended functionality. Naviant and Highland have a plethora of resources on this topic, and so today I want to drill down into only the most specific, significant considerations. Should you have interest post-webinar, feel free to reach out to us where we can discuss all of this in more detail, and we can offer the technical benefits of the cloud, such as improved disaster recovery, data availability, cost savings, incident response, security expertise, the list goes on. All right, I know this slide might be a bit scary, but take it in and let's walk through this key points together. As mentioned before, if the Highland Cloud interests you, feel free to reach out to Highland or to Naviant, and we will most definitely cover all of these items in more detail. For now, let's walk through it as if it's a story. First off, we have our meeting with our account manager. Let us say that in this meeting, we determined that the cloud is the way to go, as 71% of us have just indicated in the poll. This is a great start and brings us to our next question. Where do we go from here? The completion of the migration questionnaire would be the answer. I cannot stress this enough. To begin work, we need the migration questionnaire filled out. This form can be found online through Highland Community. Naviant is also more than happy to extend this form out to anyone who needs it. Along the way, you'll see questions that help both Highland, Naviant, and yourself gather all the necessary details needed for this project and migration to the cloud. This is including, but not limited to, environment specifics, document intake, security considerations, really anything that you might stumble across or come across in the process. We want to have documented here so that we can mitigate any risks or any concerns along the way. All right, following along our pathway, I know we're skipping a lot of steps. I really just want to drill down into the most important key points here, is delivering this data. Please work with Naviant and Highland to ensure all the appropriate information is sent over, because at the end of the day, we want your data to be seamlessly transitioned to the cloud with no downtime. The key items to note here would be a full backup of your database, a backup of your disk groups, any HTML files and scripts that you might use. Basically anything that makes your on-prem system work will need to be transitioned over to Highland and the cloud. This data will then be arranged and sent via SFTP or a network attached storage device to Highland to ensure that they can continue this migration and we see no downtime in the switch. And then speaking about continuing migration, welcome back to the return of testing. As you'll see, we have spoken about this at length. And so I'll only point out the importance once more and then add one precaution with testing in the cloud. Should we make any changes during the allotted testing time provided in that migration, we have to document these changes because once we navigate to our next and final step, a final database refresh on Highland's behalf will overwrite any untracked changes. And so you might think, oh, there's a couple things here and there that we need to fix. You might fix those, and then when you do go live, you'll notice that none of that came over. This is something that we need to document and make sure that Highland is aware of or Naviant is aware of so that we don't see any data loss or any type of loss that for that matter. And then finally, once all the testing confirms that all is well, there is not much left to say. You are now live. Congratulations, enjoy your system and enjoy the cloud. Just remember that a go live is not the end. It is just the beginning, unfortunately. Please continue to test and maintain the system, for this will help immensely on the ever-present need of a subsequent migration. All right, we made it. Thank you for sticking with me. Unlike a go live, we do unfortunately have a firm end to our webinars, and we have just about reached that point here. Along the way, we discovered a high-level understanding of all things migration. After it all, the best summary that I can provide is, of course, communication. Communicate through the preparation of both business and technical cases for change. Communicate through the implementation and migration, and finally communicate through the transition to the cloud should you go that route. And with that, I will be handing the webinar back over to Nella, who will be discussing some further resources we can provide along with the upcoming summit. Thank you all.
All right, first, before I get into all of that, do we have any questions for Christian while we let him get a sip of water, and I'll let everybody type in some questions. Give it a couple minutes. All right, Christian, I have one question here saying, can I keep my documents on-prem while using the cloud?
You can keep documents locally, but we would transition all of that data over to the cloud. You'd essentially no longer have access to, let's say, the application server directly or the database directly. That would be managed by Highland. And so you would have access to all of those documents. It would be through the cloud, though. I mean, there always is the option of having hard drives laying around, but I wouldn't recommend it, and it would most likely be safer with Highland, they will do all the backups and do all the maintenance for you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions out there that we can answer? We are running a little bit short on time, so I will keep, you guys can keep entering in some questions, but I am gonna move forward in the presentation just to get through a little bit of information that I wanted to get out to you guys. So at the end of the webinars, we love to showcase some customer ideas that are starting to get some traction on Highland community. Ideas are designed to suggest improvements for Highland products and solutions. When an idea is posted, other members can vote up on the idea, and once the points reach a threshold, the idea is considered by Highland for future enhancements. So the first one we have here is separate licensing for DocPop. Next, we have the idea to add the ability to extract and show comments from Word or Excel documents. And lastly, an idea to provide a capability to clean up orphan documents. So if you want some direct links to any of these ideas and want to vote up on them, please reach out to support@navient.com. Speaking of reaching out to support, we are now using Salesforce. So whether you are using the customer portal on Navient's website to submit a case or reaching out through email, a case will be created either way to provide the correct resource to address your questions. So that is all that we have for you today. I just want to thank everyone for joining us for this webinar. Again, please complete that survey. If you have any questions, please reach out to support@navient.com. And I hope that everybody has a great rest of your week and a great weekend. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.